All right, in this video series, we're going to talk about data warehousing. Now, we've talked about in previous videos about dimensional modeling for data warehousing, but how does this fit into the business side of things, and where does it come from? So, data warehousing is kind of derived from the old adage of business intelligence, and it really kind of fits a lot with the whole descriptive analytics component because it allows us to kind of look at what happened and what is happening. However, the very beginning of business intelligence now starts to extend our view of analytics into predictive and prescriptive type of uses. So what will happen? Why will it happen? What should I do? Why should I do it? And so creating data warehouses gives us the foundation so we can go from descriptive to predictive and prescriptive type of analytics. So what is a data warehouse? It's nothing more than a collection of integrated subject-oriented databases designed to support DSS or decision support functions, where the data is non-volatile and relevant to some moment in time. I like this smaller definition. It's a subject-oriented, integrated, time-variant, non-updatable collection of data used in support of management decision-making processes. Right? What is exactly a data warehouse? Here's the thing that you should know most. That it is integrated with multiple databases. It really fulfills the need for one subject. And it's non-volatile. That means it does not change. And it usually supports just a certain moment in time. That's what you need to know. The correct details that are here in both of these definitions, I'm not too worried about. So it's going to be a physical location where our data is organized to provide enterprise-wide cleansed data in a standard format. A lot of times people will call this the one version of the truth. Right? We need to have a base representation of our data, and especially if we're combining multiple data sets, we need to always think of the idea about getting to one version of the truth. Right? So here's the key characteristics. It's subject-oriented, integrated, time-variant, non-volatile. It can be summarized, but typically it is consolidated to a singular granularity, and this basically means it is at the lowest possible grain for the key fact table. It is not normalized, and it includes all the metadata or the data about the data or information about the data that is in it. Historically, data warehouses have been kind of growing over the time frame or over history. In the early 70s, we had some basic ideas about data, and we had mainframe computers. Over time, in the 80s, we got to personal computers, and data storage started becoming a little bit more user-friendly, and that's when the whole idea of data warehousing really started to come into play. But in the 90s, data warehousing became stronger, and this is really what they say when it was born, right? Because it was part of the enterprise organization, or what they say here is EDW, so that's Enterprise Data Warehouse. So this is really kind of like the pivotal moment where data warehousing became strong in today's businesses. Then in the 2000s, they started integrating data warehouses with business intelligence and started performing analytics. And then finally, in the 2010s, which is where we're getting ready to get out of now, we start taking a look at big data, social media analytics, text, etc. So now we're starting to mature our use of analysis that is built from way back in the 70s, just basic database, very primitive database structures. There's a lot to unpack here. I just touched upon it very lightly. And of course, feel free to ask questions if you really want to know more about the history of how data warehouses started getting into businesses. Now, over time, we're going to talk about data warehouses and then data marts. And one idea about a data warehouse versus a data mart, typically a data mart is used at a departmental level. So think about something like finance. They might have a finance data warehouse, might be specific to their needs, and this is usually what we call a data mart. However, a data warehouse might span across multiple organizations or multiple departments within an organization. It might have some limited data to it, and that could also create some discrepancies when certain groups might be looking for some more details in their analysis. So a lot of times we start looking at data warehouses as being a large structure that everyone in the organization will get, and a data mart might be something that is smaller and usable mostly for a department level. We're going to talk about architectures that use a dependent data mart, which is using data directly from the data warehouse, versus an independent data mart, which is nothing more than a small data warehouse, but it is for that business unit or department, and it really kind of oversteps any kind of data warehouse altogether. We'll see as we kind of continue with the structures. There are other components for data warehouses, and I just want to mention these. These are not going to be in any kind of large discussion for our class, but we have operational data stores, which is basically that interim area for data warehouses, and this is sometimes necessary in order to get data from their source into the data warehouse, and this is ideal for any type of data that is updated quickly, and here they say updated short periods, they say hourly. Think about Amazon might be using something of this nature to update data in every minute. So I kind of think of these as more like buffer zones and whatnot. Opera marts is a data mart that might work in the operational level. Enterprise data warehouse is a larger data warehouse. It's a single source of data. Remember, we're talking about the single version of the truth. Enterprise data warehouses really help out about that. And then there's always data about the data. And sometimes you have to have the metadata in a data warehouse of itself. Over time, we're going to talk about the idea of operational systems versus informational systems. Right? Operational systems usually run the business on a day-to-day type of schedule. When we think about what's happening, about did a customer receive a package, or how many orders did we get in today, what has to go out, are there any quality concerns? These are typical people that might be using that type of operation: clerks, salespeople, administrators, right? It's there's very frequent updates and queries, but on a few tables or rows. But the informational data system is going to be supporting decision making that's going to be more at a strategic level. We think about this as a historical point in time, and really kind of starts to look at the analyst level of people in an organization, right? And usually the searches are broad, and there are periodic updates, but it's not as small or frequent as the operational, but they are much larger than the small queries that might come out of an operational system. All right, so we'll get into data-driven decision-making with our data warehouse in the next presentation.